Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
It's all the things that go into it. The website, the marketing, your time, the back end stuff, the accounting. So that's the first thing. Then I take that and I really think about how many servings am I going to have? Right? How big is a serving? And I divide through. And that gives me my first glimpse at what my unit economic cost is.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Today, we're diving into something every entrepreneur needs, but few truly master: innovation accounting. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by building financial projections or wondered how to truly measure your growth beyond just revenue, this episode is for you. My guest, Ilene Marcus, explains how to create a simple pro forma, estimate costs and revenue, even the intangibles, and use these insights to scale confidently and sustainably. Get ready to transform your numbers into one of your most powerful business tools. So, Ilene, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Of course, I love finance. I know this is going to be a topic that I will find especially interesting too, but obviously it's one that the entrepreneur needs to understand as well. So I'm glad to have you here. But I first wanted to actually have you give a definition, because I'm sure a lot of people don't really know what pro forma even means. So if you could just give kind of a little understanding on what that really is.
Yeah, a pro forma is basically a modeling of every decision you make. I always say that my superpower is that I can quantify anything, right? My time, my energy, my thought, as well as all the inputs going into my business, raw material, sales, time on the website. So what a pro forma does is it takes all of those things that are in your head that you're spending, and it puts them down in a sheet of paper, quantifies them so that you can actually look at the money and time you're spending.
Mm-hmm. So why then is a pro forma so crucial for entrepreneurs, even those who are just starting out?
I always had a good answer for this, but now I have a better one because, as you may know, I'm just launching something called the Ilene Pan. It's a slope frying pan. And I look at what I thought was going to happen when I started. Here's what this supply will cost. Here's who I'm hiring for this. Here's that. And I had a nice little budget, right? So a real good question is, what's the difference between a budget and a pro forma? And I had a really good budget. But what happened? Prices changed, my supplier changed, I decided I want something different, and things changed. So in the budget, it's kind of stagnant. In the pro forma, I keep putting these changing kind of, I don't even know what to call them, changing facts and figures in, and that changes my whole financial model. So it's a little complicated, right? If you do it right, you're using what we call a linked spreadsheet. So you're putting in your prices, and then that's flowing into your cash flow. Now, I don't need to tell your audience why cash flow is important. We all struggle with, am I going to make payroll? Am I going to be able to pay this vendor? Am I going to be able to pay myself? So the idea of having those changes in real time model the decisions you really make for a very robust business decisions that you might not see in a stagnant budget.
Mhm. Well, even for those who I've met in the past who are starting up and they were asking about, how they figure out even a budget for what they're going to be doing, I remember telling a lot of them, like, well, once you have figured out what you think you're going to earn and what you think your expenses are going to be, now you need to reduce your revenue because you probably overestimated what you're going to, bring in that certain period of time. And you need to increase the expenses that you are planning, because something unexpected is going to come up, or like you said, prices will change. And if that is more extreme than reality, well, you're still way better off because you were thinking, I'm not going to have the money that I need for all of these things, and you have to, plan around it. But if you went with your original and things go south, now you're struggling because so many people don't end up having enough capital to really keep running, right? So I love that you even touched on that, just saying, hey, I was doing this and these things all changed, because that's a perfect example that demonstrates like why I say what I say to people too when they're starting out.
No, I think that that is incredible sound advice. And I think that's exactly the advice that needs to be delved into deeper. You don't want to, first of all, anyone, your banker, if you have an investor, if you have a partner, a business mentor, people are much more savvy this day. So it's not like, oh, here's my revenue. Oh, that sounds so good. They're really going to look at your projections. So it's not about over or underestimating. I always say it's about a range. Let's figure out a comfortable range where this could happen, best case scenario, and that can happen, worst case scenario, because that's really the likelihood. The idea that you will be 100% on your numbers from when you start to when you actually implement and finish, I've never seen it happen. I don't know if you have, probably not. They always change. So I
Right.
always give the advice, like, let's start with a budget and build that into Performer. And this is the way I train people to do a budget. And people laugh, but it works every time. So I'm a Jewish mother. God willing, I'll be a grandmother soon, but I'm a Jewish mother, and I make a chicken soup, right? And I have to look at the cost of my chicken soup. So I go to the store, I buy the chicken, the carrots, the celery, I put some special things in there, maybe a parsnip, maybe a tomato, right? Everything I spend at the store. Now, is that the price of my soup?
Mm-mm.
No, it's not, because I have to go home and use my water, my pot. Maybe I have some salt and pepper, some other seasonings. Then it's my time. Then it's my energy. Then it's the packing the soup. Then it's the noodles that go with the soup. So you get what I'm saying now. I now show people, here's your all in budget. So that's the first thing. It's not just the tangibles. Yeah, I'm buying, for me, my frying pan, I'm buying my supply chain, the pan, the ring, the other things I need. It's all the things that go into it, the website, the marketing, your time, the back end stuff, the accounting. So that's the first thing. Then I take that and I really think about, how many servings am I going to have? Right? How
Mhm.
big is a serving? And I divide through. And that gives me my first glimpse at what my unit economic cost is. And that's what most people are looking at these days, a unit economic cost. What is the all-in value of what I'm providing? You can then separate it any way you want. For the IRS, you might separate out, administration versus product. For a nonprofit, it's a little different. But you can then look at, okay, what's in kind? What do I already have on my shelf? What don't I need? But as soon as people start telling me, well, I already have that, so I'm not spending it, I say, that's great for today or this year. But next year, when you have to buy that, you're already behind the eight ball because now you need more money. So I would
Mhm.
suggest we start with a static budget, big laundry list, and, take a deep breath and just start lifting those things. Because as you do it, you're like, oh, yeah, they lift up, they round up. And then really think through how many units of service. If you're a solopreneur,
Mhm.
I don't know what your timing is, 1820, that's a number of like a 35-hour work week times 52 weeks. How many hours can you provide? And start with an unit economic cost, and then think about how you can leverage that and change that and make that more, like we say, more passive, right? Get more income
Mhm.
instead of you always doing the work. It's a long
Right.
answer, Candy, but a big one.
Well, while you were talking right there at the end too, and you were talking about, the number of hours and, how many hours in a year, I would love for you even to touch on too, what really is how many hours someone is working versus how many hours really can go into that product or service that they're doing, right? Because a lot of people might think, well, I have 40 hours, and they might think they could bill 40 hours, but generally there's more work that has to be done than actually is client work or creating that product. So do you want to touch on that and how to adjust maybe their calculations to take that into consideration?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I remember a story when I was first learning budgeting about that. And someone said there was a man that worked at a company and he would just sit there all day and look out the window. And the other employees were very mad at it because why does this guy get paid the same as us? Because he's just looking out a window. And finally, the owner of the company said, because one day he came up with that product that made us $1 million looking out that window.
Mm,
So, right,
mm,
there's like, a lot of us, right, our best ideas happen when we're shampooing our hair or when, we're doing something not involved. So I think you have to really think about what is your active work and what is your passive work. So my active work is I'm on my website, I'm calling vendors, I'm calling suppliers, I'm dealing with my salespeople, I'm dealing with my supply chain, I'm actually doing stock, whatever, I'm dealing with customers. That is your active work. Then you also
mhm,
have to think, if you're the founder, of your passive work, the ideas that come. And maybe that sits over here. So it's really about your active work. Just because you're sitting in your office, I love the way you said that, 40 hours a week doesn't mean you're working 40 hours a week.
mhm.
So I would separate it that way. Some of it, we have a saying, and I'm sure you use it, you can either work in your business or on your business. So I
Right.
would calculate the in my business as my direct cost and my on my business as that passive income and what I bring to as a founder. Because if we do our jobs right and that revenue grows, we're the one that's getting that ROI, that, return
Mhm,
on investment. So that doesn't have to be in our hourly. That's the love and our skill set that we're bringing it to grow the business.
mhm. And a few minutes ago, you were also talking about unit economics and figuring out the cost, right? But I would love for you also to touch on the fact that, maybe someone is looking into, like you talked about, going to the grocery store, buying all these things. Now I have, my water, my time, and, all of these things. So they might take those numbers and be like, okay, here's what it really costs me. But what about all the other overhead that they have in the business? Like, how do they consider, insurance or paying rent, all of that into what is the portion of the cost of that I pay every year that I also need to kind of add into my unit costs, so I'm making sure that I'm covering all of my expenses, not just the direct costs?
And I think that's exactly where pro forma does a trick versus a budget. So a budget is going to list your annual cost for everything. A pro forma is going to actually model how much in that year am I going to produce and spend and what's that cost. So Candy has graciously asked me if I have a download, and I do, that is a simple pro forma. And it actually has that entire list. It's the annual cost for your insurance, your internet, this, what percentage based on what you're producing that year. So I'll take the Eileen pan as an example. In the first year, I'm only planning to sell 1,200 pieces. So the cost, right, of what my insurance is, and even though my time, my internet time and my web time might be more, my insurance costs, my accounting costs, some of the other indirect costs are a lot less. In the next year, everything, green lights go, universe, please comply. I plan to produce about 7,800 pieces. Well, then everything has to factually change. So it's that static change between those two. And we call this cost allocation. How much am I really allocating to what was being done, or how much is going somewhere else? You might have a better example of cost allocating. It's something that, in the nonprofit world, we have used forever, that like, okay, I have insurance and this much goes to this program, this much to that program, this much to that staff. And in a performer, you start to actually look at what we call a program budget or a unit economic budget. What are the actual costs associated with making the project, the product or the project? And then I do a bottom line, I call it. So underneath, what are all the other costs that I have to spend that might not be included? And then we pick a percentage. So performer does include, we're making some assumptions, but at the same time, it's still including everything. And then you can divide through for your unit economic cost. Does that make sense? You want me to go?
Yep. Well, I would love also for you maybe to explain, if someone is thinking of whether they're maybe just starting a business from scratch and so they have to get information, or someone is creating a new product and they don't know all of their actual costs yet. Like, how do they actually research and find, okay, this is what it's really going to cost you, instead of just saying, oh, I think it's going to cost this much per unit. It's actually going to cost me this much to manufacture it. Like, where do they actually get those hard numbers instead of just thinking about, I think this is what it's going to be?
I love that question because, this used to be a very hard question, but we have something called the internet now. Now, you don't want to just Google everything. You want to do a little research. Most of us, including me, who created a sloped frying pan, which is different than a normal frying pan, but there are other people who have been through it. So you try to go with other industry experts. You look at industry associations, right? You can ask clearly very good questions now on Google or whatever AI choice you have, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever you're using, Copilot. What is the average cost in these years? There are a lot of industries that have reports, and I would go to those. Best, the annual cost of, or the top 10 providers. I also find talking to mentors and people in the business, even though they might be your competitors, people really do want that connection in that community. If someone's not going to share that with you, that's not your person, but someone else will. They've been through it and they'd like to help you. So industry events, other companies or local businesses that do like it. Most communities have an economic development corporation or agency or a small business arm that wants to help you. They can help you in benchmarking. So, but I think you're touching on something really important. We do not pull these things out of the air, right? I do something, I just resigned as my town finance chair. I did it for 3 years. So this is like a government position. And what they were doing was every year, right, they'd have a budget and they'd do what we call an inflator. We're all familiar with it, right? A COLA, a cost of living adjustment, 5%. So this is what we spent last year on snow removal. Let's include 5%, 10%. I made them do something called zero-based budgeting. Go back to the baseline and say, because everything changed after COVID, the entire supply chain. How much is petrol really costing? How much are the machines costing? How much has the weather changed? How much, because people are home, is our usage of the roads changing? So it's a really good exercise when you're starting to go to that baseline and to really explore, what is it costing? What is the price? There are a lot of government, the General Accounting Office does a consumer price index. There are a lot of places that actually have numbers and segregated by sectors. Again, a long answer, but we do not have to make this stuff up. And this is the type of stuff that you want to have. Call a Candy, connect with me, talk to your entrepreneurs, your business coaches that have been through it, who can actually help you right-size the budget. Because we don't want you to overinflate so you think it's this much expensive and you get discouraged, but we don't want you to underestimate so that you end up what I call on a short financial runway. You can't actually build the product. So it's a very important piece of doing your homework.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love for you to maybe touch on, maybe there was something I didn't know, to ask you in terms of those unknowns or non-tangible, the factors in these financial models. Like, is there something I missed I didn't ask you about that you want to explain?
That is a great question. That's always my question. What didn't what didn't I ask? I think one thing we are circling around but didn't come to is the actual cost of what you sell your product for. So when you build this pro forma, or this financial modeling of what's in your head, and you're putting it down in paper to understand the all-in value, and you look at your budget and you look at your supply chain, you're doing this with an eye toward, what am I actually charging for that service? These two things should be related. Oh, I think I'll give you my own example. Can't stop talking about my pan, right? I think that this is a $29.99 item because it's a novelty. People that own expensive cookware aren't going to buy expensive because they want it to match their set. So there's a $29.99 pan. I did my research and it was definitely right. This is a lower end pan. But when I actually went, especially with the new tariffs and some of the new import things, I couldn't hit that mark. So I had to really think about, all right, where do I want to go? That included doing research on the tariffs. That included doing research with the places like Walmart that I hope to sell it, and QVC and the other places about what they're going to charge me. So I had to really think about, what's the markup? What do I want to sell it for? And then make some decisions on value. Is it a nonstick? Is it an aluminum? Is it 11-inch? Is it 10-inch? So those kind of negotiating between my plan, or what I perfectly like, and what the market can bear right now, that negotiation is really how you come to your price. I have seen way too many entrepreneurs say, this is my price. This is what I'm worth. maybe,
Mhm.
but are you going to have customers at that point? Are you going to get traction? Are people going to put money down? So I think the budget and the pro forma are very key to understanding how much service you need to provide, how often you can provide it, and what your price points are, which then determine your profit and your revenue. So those two things go hand in hand.
Mhm. Well, I think that's a great point that you brought up too, is because a lot of people are probably thinking too, oh, my product is so wonderful and it's worth, this much money. But like you said, when you're comparing it to other things in the market, is your price, just barely under something that's like a higher quality, but you're not even close to that quality. So you're really not going to be able to sell it. Like really honestly looking at what you have for your product and your service and where do you belong in the market and where should your pricing be. So do you have any more tips maybe on that, like how to figure that out?
Yeah, so I come out of the Techstars is a company that helps small that entrepreneurs get started, and they use a three-stage model, and they have some great resources on their website. I'll send you that link also. The first step is always customer validation. And even though, we've heard this time and time again, it's not about how perfect my widget is on my frying pan. It's about what problem am I solving? And I think you really, especially if you're first launching, and even if you're in business, what is really the value your clients are getting? Why do they purchase your product? You really need to understand that to start with, so you know what features to build in and what to sell. So that's kind of how to right size your project. So always, it's not just that research about how much is this going to cost? What's the supply chain? What is it going to look like? But who is going to use it and how, and who is that demographic? Where am I going to reach them? And then how much are they willing to spend? So in my case with the Ilene pan, because everything I do is complicated, I had what they call bimodal target group. On one side, I have the me's. 60 plus, living alone, sick of making a lot of dishes. I want a one pan solution, but I have nice cookware. I don't want, to spend $100 on a pan. I want to try this out to see if it's going to work. On the other side, I have people in their 30s who are scratching their head saying, how come I don't have any money to buy an apartment, when they look at their Uber Eats account and, especially in cities, and they're spending $40 a night. Oh, I might spend $34 on one frying pan to see
Mhm.
one night if I can cook. So I have both of those populations, and both of them wanted a low price point. So I had to figure out how to keep my product, to a minimum viable product, an MVP, where I could keep that price point low, no matter what I thought it should be. Yeah, that's beautiful. And maybe someday I'll build there. But this is really about, how am I going to not bleed money while I'm creating the
Mhm.
pan and create some traction? So those price points are very important that we set. And I would start with customer validation.
Mhm. So someone listening might be saying, "Well, I heard about pro forma, put all the numbers in, figure all these things out, your unit costs and all of these things, but I am not a finance person and this seems overwhelming for me." Do you have any tips on how to make this a little more simplified for them so they can actually use this tool as well?
Great question, and I'm going to answer it with another thought. None of us are technical people, but we all know how to use our phone. We all know how to get it going. We all can connect to a Zoom. And I think that's the same case with financial. That's why I used the chicken soup story. None of us
Mhm.
are financial, but we damn know if we want that sweater or that vacation or that car, or we're saving for something, we know how to jigger our budget and how to make changes to get there. Apply that to your business. It's really no different. You all have these skills, right? You have a home, you might have a rent, you might have a mortgage, you have other bills, during the holiday time, you want more money, and you know what to do to make that work. It's really no different. It's just on a different scale. So just like we say we're not technical yet, think about what we couldn't do 10 years ago. I think most of you are already there. And so my advice is, instead of fretting about it all day, wake up. I'm a big prayer girl. Say a prayer, do whatever you need to do to get yourself centered, and do it first thing in the morning, so it's not over your head, and
Mhm.
the fear, the anxiety all day is ratcheting up. Hey, look at my numbers. And once you start playing with them, and I will give Candy a simple performer to download, it's actually a fun game. I play with myself. Hey, is this going to come out the number I thought? Where am I going to find this data? How is this going to add up? Oh, if this changes, look at how the link spreadsheet changes. and the numbers change. It's actually, I'm obviously me and Candy get excited by this stuff, but it's actually a lot easier than you think. And like I said, you're already doing it in many aspects of your life.
And it sounds like just get the form, put in numbers, start learning how it works, plug in different things at different times, see how the adjustments happen. And really, over time, you'll be more comfortable with it. Just like other things that sometimes we have to try, we're not really, so sure about it, but over time, we become more comfortable.
Yeah, I always think about Olympic athletes, right? They didn't wake up, they were fast,
Hmm.
but they didn't wake up running or swimming at that speed. They practice every day. And that's what we
Mhm.
need to do every day, especially as a business owner. You need to know your numbers, your inventory, your sales, your web traffic. You need to know your numbers. That's what makes it go. So you have to practice what you need to look at and how you get comfortable with it 100%. And over time, it becomes second nature. And the beauty of that is as you look at it, you start to see patterns or trends, right? It's a whole nother world that opens up for you instead of just seeing the inventory, the shelves, your client list. All of a sudden, you're going to see, wait, I'm busiest during this point. Or you know what? I'm doing a much better job with existing customers buying more than new customers. Wait, maybe I should focus on new customers. So it's not just about your price and are you making money? It's about really your business strategy and who is your most perfect customer and how to keep on, adding value to that and increasing your
Mhm.
sales.
Mhm. Well, I know this has been very informative. I'm sure our listeners are going to have learned a lot from it, but I do know we're coming to the end of the time we have together. And I know you did mention you have a pro forma download you're going to send to us, but is there anything else you wanted to share that our listeners can get from you as a resource?
Yes. So I have a book and it's called Managing Annoying People. It's on Amazon, has an orange cover. And in that book, there is one of the early chapters is, people say, oh, so I'm annoyed. How much is it really costing me? I told you my superpower is quantifying anything. There is a
Mhm.
formula in that book to calculate annoyance. And if you can do that formula, which is your time versus the person's time, the value, it's a very simple formula. You will start to get comfortable. So I'd love, my book is, I think it's only $8 on Amazon. So please download it and you can look for that formula and that will start to get you really smart about when I'm annoyed, how much is that taking away from my business? Or how much is that one salesperson that I don't think is such a big deal, but wait, he's taking my time or she from other things. So I'd love for you to buy my book, Managing Annoying People.
Hmm.
And the
Interesting.
third thing, yeah,
Uh-huh.
the formula, I had such a fight with the formatter about how you put the formula in, right? They wanted to put it in a paragraph. I'm like, no, it needs to be a formula. And most of us, I have a joke about high school algebra because it's funny that I do finances all day. I always say I spent all of high school looking for X and the rest of my life trying to get rid of my ex. Sorry for,
Mm.
for those of us that are divorced. But the point is, it's really simple once you follow it. And
Hmm.
of course, I provide free consultations, about how to get started, about what I'm missing, about why do my numbers look wonky. So I will give you that information too. Just get some time on my calendar and, walk through whatever you need to walk through.
Perfect. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, how do they contact you?
So LinkedIn is always great, but my website is my name, Ilene Marcus.com. So it's IleneMarcus.com. You will see my socials, my email, everything you need to know to get to me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, Eileen. I know I've enjoyed this conversation very much, and I am sure that listeners will have learned a lot from our short conversation. There's so much more we could have touched on, but I really appreciate your being here today.
Thank you.
And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.